Hecker.
Hecker? Are you glad to not be a hecker anymore?
It had a lot of jokes that came along with it.
Well, it's always what it rhymes with. Fart and Martin.
True.
Yeah,
True.
That's what gets you into trouble. Yep. No, so today, this is the Heartache Connoisseur podcast. It's Thursday in Iowa. We're going to have a discussion with Janis today. Janis is a friend of mine, friend of a friend. She's a well-known businesswoman in our community. She had a very successful handbag company. And we've come to know each other. Shelley knew you.
Right.
You're friends with Shelley.
Right.
And I'm always looking for people that kind of like are on this journey where they're aware of the journey, I guess maybe you'd say, where there's this awareness that I used to be like this, then I went through some of this, and it really changed me, and I can talk about that eloquently. Mm-hmm. And you're one of those people that can do that. So tell me a little bit about maybe just some background and what you think would be a helpful place to start.
Well, I think when we say handbags, I was the Bagolitas lady, and it was the fabric handbag with fringe around the top. Also got a lot of jokes about the looks like a dead animal with all the little fringe happening around the top. But that was a journey that started in 2005, and it was an unexpected entrepreneurial journey. I have an art degree, and I was actually doing graphic design was kind of my thing that I came out of college with. And I was on a break from projects with the company I worked for. And I was recovering kitchen chairs, and my husband, Brad, didn't like them. And so I made a bag out of it, and it turned into this completely unexpected journey.
So you didn't even intend to do this?
No.
You were like, I'm bored.
I was super bored.
I'm watching Oprah. I need something to do with my hands.
Yep. My kids were taking 3-hour naps a day, and I was very efficient with keeping the house together. And so I just needed something to do in that time.
Mm-hmm. And so Brad didn't like it. Why? Because it was all floral?
Yeah, it was flowery. I never do flowers. And for some reason, I had blue walls, and this fabric was blue with flowers. And I just thought, well, that would match.
Did it occur to you right away to start a business out of this?
No. Actually, interestingly enough, my grandma, the winter before, had given me a card, and it had a little gift of money in it. It said to use for opportunities you aren't expecting. Mm-hmm. And so I was just kind of sitting on that. And then I was pretty excited. I made a bag, and it was pretty bad, the first one, but I had a couple sewing classes growing up, and my mom and grandmother sewed. And so I really wanted to see if I could get it better. I mean, part of it initially was just, can I make this thing? And it was such a... Gosh, to make something and have it be usable, like I had never really done something like that before. And so there was this fulfillment that came by having this bag. And then I started carrying it around. I think it was like the 3rd edition that I felt like I could take out. And granted, it was floral, and that's really not my style. But it was me. I made it, So I was carrying it around, and people started asking me to make them. In that era, in 2005, handbags were pretty much leather or just plain colors, brown, gray, black, and mine were vibrant prints. So I started buying more fabrics, and I really, with my art degree, enjoyed putting together fabrics that most people probably wouldn't have thought to put together, different patterns together. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was about kind of using that information that I had from my training in college. And anyway, I ended up just deciding that I knew I was going to be on a break for at least 3 more months. And so I thought, well, I'll just because I didn't want to know how to accommodate people's asking for bags. So I was just like, I'll just put together a bunch of bags. I'll use the money my grandma gave me, make as many bags as I can, and have a party at my house, and then just invite anyone I can think of who expressed interest, and have them come over. And the funny thing is, I couldn't wait to go back to work. I loved my job. I worked for Breakthrough Literacy, and it was such a great mission and such a great company. And so all I really wanted to do was recoup the money I put back into it. Like it was more just a project and something to keep me busy until I got back to my other job.
Yeah. Now people don't know Iowa City. This was kind of a phenom. I mean, I didn't know you, but I knew about BackElitist because, well, first of all, it was right across the street from my office.
Right.
But it was known to be very successful. Is it fair to say it like far exceeded your expectations?
Oh, I mean, I had no expectations.
I mean, we're talking big numbers here.
It was pretty big. And I had no expectations because I honestly was just trying to find something to do to get me through the summer until I went back to work again. Mm-hmm. And I think success is an interesting word because it was definitely successful, but not profitable. Like there wasn't a financial success, but it was successful in like what a great business adventure, what a great lesson. I mean, I call it Bagolitas U. Like I went to Bagolitas University to get a business degree, and I mean there was so many successes. I mean, the successes far outweigh the pieces of it that weren't successful, like profitability.
Was it a go down in flames situation? Did it just implode?
I call it a death by like 1,000 paper cuts.
Okay.
It was we were doing really great until 2009, and that's when the economy flipped in the fall. And, we were at the size where we had over 25 employees probably in our office. We had like 30 local seamstresses. We used a production house in Chicago, and we had over 200 consultants around the country. So it was everywhere. It was in like 36 states. And we placed our normal order where we ordered inventory for the consultants, and the home party just sort of dried up. People weren't going to ask their friends to come over and have a home party because their friend was just telling them at coffee that they don't know if their husband's still going to have a job.
Mm-hmm. And their 401k is worth half of what it was yesterday.
So it was like nobody's having a home party. And honestly, I only did home parties because that's what people wanted. I'm not a big home party fan, if I'm being totally honest. I never had a home party before I built a home party business. Like that was not me.
So one of the reasons I'm asking you about this is because oftentimes in people's lives, a major event like this business that was wildly successful and then came to a halt, I mean, that changes people. Mm-hmm. It really shifts your perspective about the world you live in. You're 44, I'm 42, and we're at that age where we can look back now, and it's not so long that we were in our 20s. In our 30s, and we remember that. Mm-hmm. We remember what it was like to feel all of that hope.
Yeah. There's a burn, like the naivety is gone.
Yeah, the naivety, that's exactly right. But people, it's a good thing to talk about, not to scare people out of pursuing their dreams, but to really maybe be a bit more specific about their motivations and what their dreams are, as opposed to just, because like you said, I mean, you saw the success in certain ways. And let's say that the economy hadn't tanked. I mean, this could have gone on easily to become, a long-standing, who knows, multi-million-dollar company. I mean, it really had that potential.
Yeah.
I mean, it really did.
Yeah.
And now you're back to watching Oprah with nothing to do, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what has all this taught you?
What has all it taught me? I just have learned so much. The business taught me a ton about starting a business, stepping out, just not worrying about, like, what you start out with. The first bags I started out is not what I ended up with. It kept evolving. It kept morphing. And I think the biggest lessons from the business was just the why that I originally started with shifted. And so actually when it ended, I was okay with it because it really had turned into to be just like every other home party business. And that was never what it was supposed to be in my mind. And so that I lost my navigation, like it allowed it to move away from what the original intent was. And then after it is just, you kind of have a choice. You either take the event that's happened and you use it to learn from it, or you let it define you and you stay buried in it. Mm-hmm. And so I just started picking apart everything in my life to try to understand what happened leading up to it, why I was so, all the things that hurt, what was hurting, why did I hurt so bad when it ended, and what does that mean going forward?
So this was really painful for you.
It was really painful. I mean, it was like this baby, and it was this thing that was so good and so fun. And I mean, I, along with everybody that worked for us, really put their whole heart into it. I mean, we knew we were part of something bigger than ourselves.
It felt like a mission. It felt like probably a gift.
It was a gift. It was a mission. It was this thing that was going to live on beyond us. I mean, it's like legacy,
Yeah. And of course we don't want to throw anybody under the bus, and I'm sure emotions ran high for a lot of different people, but it was it ended some friendships for you, and then some relationships were really taxed, and you were at the helm, so the buck stopped with you, right? So,
right.
Now I know for me, like having gone through, I started Meadowlark, and so I hear some parallels there with you. And when I started out, I didn't necessarily I didn't really have much of an expectation either. I just thought I was going to be in private practice, and it's kind of gradually grown, and it's done pretty well. And I can't imagine if the whole thing just sort of came down, what that would do to my identity and how much of myself I've wrapped up into that place. It's a little scary sometimes when I imagine if it would just dissolve and what that would mean to me. But my version maybe would be like my divorce, for instance, where you have this thing that you've poured your heart and soul into for years and years, and over a relatively short period of time, that's suddenly gone from your life. And it creates a dark night of the soul, and it grows you up real fast, I guess you might say. And I guess that's partly the discussion I'd love to have with you is like, what does this pain do, and why is it not necessarily a bad thing?
Well, I mean, you nailed it when you said it grows you up. I mean, it grows up every aspect of you. I think that the first phase for me, I totally believe it was like Dark Night of the Soul, whatever name you want to give what I went through, the wall, if you're looking at spiritual formation. And the first thing was I felt like I was really assessing the damage. I mean, I really started a practice of journaling at that point. I mean, I was journaling sometimes during the crisis, but I really tried to sit down and start every day out and just get a new practice in my life to sort of sort through what I was feeling, a healthy way to deal with it. And I was really assessing, the damage, what happened, and what are my feelings, and who did I think I was, what were my, what got lost, what do I need to forgive, just all like, I tried to get myself kind of triaged, I guess, first. And then the next phase of it was, who is God? And I mean, I had to grow up my version of myself first. And then I had to grow up my version of God, because the God of Sunday school didn't fit the bill for what happened in my world, because I was doing everything. I mean, I felt like it was a God mission. I still believe that it was. Yeah. But just every aspect of God, I had to grow that up. And so I bought so many books. I mean, I just dove into books, self-help books. I did do some counseling, and like even post-traumatic stress, I think, was part of what was happening for me.
Sure.
And I really just sort of took myself to school, and I underline in books and write in books, and I just kept finding the next book that helped with the next piece.
You went after it like a bulldog.
I went after it like a diehard, I'm going to get through this.
You've got the resiliency gene.
Yes.
That's a fabulous quality.
Yes.
God bless people that got born with that. That's a really great thing.
Yep.
So the other thing I think is interesting about our conversations is that you are, well, you're female. You have a lot of friends. You have a lot of friends that are kind of right in the thick of mainstream America, doing the kid thing and the work thing and the marriage thing and all that.
Yep.
And I see you as somebody who has a pretty good handle on that culture, that little subculture. What's the state of womankind in our world right now?
I think that if women are being honest, I think that there's a lot of women faking fine. I think they're out there holding everything up and like Superman kind of. And I think that inside they're probably pretty empty.
Marriages are, I mean, you and I were just visiting the other night about
I
this.
think everything, I think it's the standard protocol. You've gone through life and you went to college maybe, and you got married and you had kids and maybe a career, and you're starting to see the other side coming, the what next, the kids are going to be moving on and stuff, and you've spent, you've poured everything into, I think what I see is people not pouring into themselves and don't even know how to like fill themselves. So we're out there serving everybody on an empty tank.
How do you know if you're faking fine?
That's a really good question. I think you got to get really honest with what's happening inside and
First of all, we should say, honestly, I'm imagining you will answer yes, but I have faked fine.
Oh, I fake fine a
for
lot.
years.
I mean, I think sometimes it plays a good, like when you get up and you don't feel great, fake fine and eventually things get better that day.
Right.
Like it plays a role, but it's that perpetual role where it's the weight of it and not being able to articulate how lonely you are in a relationship or how unhappy you are at a job. Like we've got all these pieces that we got to keep moving, so we're afraid to upset the apple cart.
Yeah.
And then even when we do, we don't know where to go to get the help to figure out how to get the apple cart back up again. Or, I think obviously your profession is a resource, but it was...
And there's this, there seems to be a misconception that you should just be able to run around to the other side of your apple cart, push it up on 2 wheels or 4 wheels or whatever, and put the apples back on there and everything's fine again.
Which is honestly what I tried to do when Bagolitas fell apart. I'm like, I'm just going to put this apple cart back together. And I felt a lot of pressure. As I'm out in the community, people are like, what next, And I felt this obligation to give people something else because they loved the Cinderella story that Bagolitas had. And I wanted that apple cart put back together as soon as I could possibly put it back together because I wanted to give this community that something next that they were looking for. And I think I wasted a lot of time in the forest because I wouldn't sit in the waiting and I wouldn't allow God to do his thing within that because I was so busy trying to put it back together as fast as I could.
How are you who's the Janis pre-Bagolitas compared to the Janis now? How are those two people different?
The Janice pre-Bagolitas, super naive. I mean, it's all going to work out, right? Because I'm doing this for God and I'm giving money back to the community and my heart was completely in the right place about wanting to build something that would do good, and I loved that it gave people jobs and something more, and I loved that people could carry a bag and someone would say, oh my gosh, I love your bag, and they internalize it and feel better about themselves. Mm-hmm. So to me, it was the epitome of why wouldn't this succeed? Why wouldn't God just rain down on this and bless this? Because it's right where, I'm in the sweet spot,
Right.
And so when it came down, it was confusing because why would this thing not be succeeding? And then I'd look around at other businesses and think, well, why are they still going? I had this amazing mission and stuff. So
I'm doing this for good reasons.
I know. So the Janice on the other side, I am emptier in a good way. I think that I have just emptied myself of a lot of baggage, a lot of needs that don't need to be needed. I don't need anything to be big. It felt really great to have something big, and significance to me feels different. Impact feels different. Purpose feels different. I mean, honestly, everything feels different because I emptied myself. I mean, I think that's the biggest.
It's funny. I bet you haven't listened to my podcast from yesterday.
I'm betting I haven't, but it's probably on my list.
But I was talking about this just yesterday. This concept of vacancy, internal vacancy or emptiness, as a good thing, and then that's the place that you can aspire to be, so that then you can be filled with something substantial beyond our own. It's sort of like I use the metaphor of taking your lighthouse and filling it, using it as a storage unit, as opposed to letting that beacon be installed there.
Right. And available to be used. I love that. I feel vacant. I feel healthy. I feel strong.
So that if something happened, let's say your kids get sick, let's say your husband loses his job hypothetically, or something like that, you kind of have this sense of I'm going to be okay.
I'm going to be okay. And it's all part of the process. And I look back and I'm so grateful for what I went through. I'm grateful for every pain that came with it. I'm grateful for every piece of it because, gosh, I like who I am on this side even more than the person before. Like, I mean, I like myself more.
Yeah. And you stop striving, don't you?
Oh, and it's the motivation. Honestly, it's the motivation that has flipped. It's like there's the vacancy, and then the motivation is coming from my ego doesn't need any of it. Before, my ego needed it to feel approved and to feel loved and all these other pieces. And I'm good now, you know? If God wants to make something new happen, I'm good. But I'm good if it doesn't happen too.
Yeah, you mentioned motivation and significance and the things that people, I talk to people about this a lot. They'll come in and I'll ask them, what are you doing this for? Well, I hate my job. Well, why are you going every day? Well, because if I don't, I'll have to move out of this house that we said we wanted, and I won't be able to drive this particular car anymore. Yeah, but you just told me that you're never home to enjoy any of that anyway, because you're working 14 hours a day making somebody else's dreams come true. Yeah, but there's no options. Really? Like, because you're a smart person, you're articulate and motivated. I think you could get in the car, go to Key West, start tending bar, and waste away in Margaritaville tomorrow if you wanted to. Yeah. And it's like people get so trapped in it does not look like there are any options. And I do empathize. It doesn't. I mean, it looks like the cost is too great. And it takes an event like this where you don't have a choice. It's ripped from you.
Right.
And then you find out that the costs that were preventing you from making meaningful changes aren't insurmountable.
Right. Right.
At least that's been my experience. And you're not just any guest, Janice. Let's tease our audience a little bit. And we don't know where this is headed, but you and I have kind of started putting our heads together.
Right.
And thinking about ways we can take this message to a broader audience. And that's part of why I'm doing the podcast is I believe in this. I really do. I believe that this is a message that people, especially in their first half and middle of their lives, need to hear. And it's something that they want to hear. And there are other voices out there. This is not, we didn't write this, we didn't invent this, but we can articulate this for our time and place in our location, etc. And I think you and I share a lot of common values about that. And I don't know, what do you think about this? What are we going to do?
I think it's exciting. I think that, one of the craziest things is going through it. I didn't feel like I had resources. I didn't feel like anyone was talking about this crisis that you're going through. And I would have loved to have it be normalized and not think that there's something wrong with me. And so I love the idea of a constant conversation about moving through to that second half of life and moving through that big transition, that the dark night of the soul, the wall, whatever you want to call it. And just growing up. I mean, I want people to grow up. I want people, not in a negative way, but to just grow up so they can have more love, have more joy, have more happiness.
Yeah, that's what I want too. I mean, that's my purpose. This joy thing. I can't stop talking about it. This is what happens when you meet your creator and you finally get broken down enough to put away all of your own attempts to fix it yourself. And he's so good that you start to experience joy, like you say, and peace, and an awareness that no matter what happens, even death, that it's going to be okay.
Right.
And then suddenly you're free to live. With abandon and risk. Like, this is a risk for me. I mean, sitting down here in this basement, putting my own personal and very intimate views of the world out there in public it's a risk. It comes with professional liability. It comes with personal liability. It will probably alienate some of my relationships because I'm allowing people to really see who I am and what I think about things. It sets me up to look like a fool if this doesn't work, if there's not enough views on YouTube or whatever to make, like, well, there's Marty with his little ego party down there running his mouth. And, it's not that, that's not it. I don't need that anymore. It's been, like you say, it's shaped. My ego has been worn down to the point where, if I really need to go get my ego stroked, I know how to do that, and I could, But what I'm really interested in is seeing a lot of hurting people hear a message of hope and have some practical instruction about steps that they can take to find their way out of the darkness.
Yep.
And this is a sick world, man. I'm telling you, people are so miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I just one right after the other. And I know I have a biased sample because they're coming into the doctor's office because of it. But these are normal people. These are people that are in their communities that nobody knows that there's even a problem.
Right.
And they're coming into me and they're punching holes in the drywall. And they're spinning themselves into financial oblivion, trying to make it be okay. They're drinking too much. They're addicted sexually. They're having affairs. There's any number of things that go on in normal households all over this country that are a living hell for people, for real. And I don't know, what are we going to do? We're going to, well, for one thing, we're planning. It's not set in stone, but we're beginning to think about doing a marriage retreat, which is exciting. What are we thinking about that? What are we going to do?
Well, we're each going to do different things. No, I think that, gosh, I mean, I have a lot of coffee dates with people, and I'm pretty connected to a lot of people in our community. And I think one of the biggest messages I hear is, the emptiness in marriages and the frustration in marriages and the just suffering, like this is just the way it has to be. So I'm just going to suck it up is kind of, and they don't know how to change and make it better. They don't know how to work as a team to make it better. And then there's also well, I'm changing, but they're not, and so getting that collaboration as a team moving forward. So I would hope that what we're able to offer in a very short period of time, obviously, because it's a little half day or day and a half. No.
Sure. Yeah. We're getting our feet wet.
Kind of a thing. But I mean, my hope is that they have they have hope. I mean, my biggest goal is that they leave with hope and a little more joy in their marriage and some kind of action steps of things that they can do to start moving the needle in a different direction on the temperature of their marriage. Like if their temperature's, at 1 to 10, they're at a 4 or a 3, I'd love if they left at a 5 or a 6. And then that gives you hope. Anything movement forward, I think, is where you find hope and you think, okay, there is potential. Because if there's potential, I think people hang on.
You're absolutely right. And a lot of times, I just had sort of this image come to mind that growth, we're making it sound pretty bad. And in a lot of ways it is pretty bad. But the thing that I've seen in my work is that even small changes, even little ones, there's a metaphor we use in my business. It's like the door is stuck, and sometimes all you need to do is sand off one of the corners and it starts working fine again. And what you think is this huge problem in this wall that I can't get through is really just, if I just altered this thing and looked at this differently, that I would, and then you open up into a whole new space. Now there's some things in there then to work on, and maybe there's another door over there that's jammed shut, and you kind of keep going through this process. But there can be big breakthroughs with even things like a small 1-day marriage retreat where, we get up there and I envision maybe we tell our story a little bit. We identify some of the unhealthy patterns that people are engaging in, and in their relationships, some of the characters they take on and play out these repeated patterns over and over again. And then give some instruction on how to get out of that. Also how to invite God into it. I mean, I can't overstate how important that piece is. And the reason I talk about God so much in this podcast is because in my work, I've become convinced that when everything else lets you down, that's all you have left. Because oftentimes everything else does let you down in terms of the pills and all of the self-help and the therapy. And again, I'll say, do that. Do it. I believe in it. And they're all steps on this process. But growth eventually puts you face to face with the big question of, what is this all for? Why am I here? What am I doing? Is it worth it? And those are questions you got to look up to find the answer to. What's your experience?
Well, it's interesting because as you were saying that, I'm like, and what if God lets you down? Like that was sort of where I was at, where I thought that I had pleased God, and then God had let me down. And so I think that, I mean, to me, I see our relationship with our spouse as this great opportunity to learn how to have more self-awareness of your own self, your skills in communicating, and then how you relate to this other person, and developing an awareness of how I mean, to me, the space between two people is sacred. I mean, that's church, when two people come together.
Well said.
And so it's like, I want that to be as healthy as possible, and I want to clear that space out, and then that makes room for God in the marriage. And I think that relationship, when we use our marriage to refine us, then it also refines our relationship with God. And
it's a fabulous teaching tool. People will often underestimate that bumping up against that other person in close quarters exposes you and gives you an opportunity for change in ways that very little else does. So yeah, I mean, this whole kind of midlife shift that can occur for people, often the breakdown is the marriage. I mean, you talked about your business, but your marriage has stayed intact.
Yes.
My business stayed intact, but my marriage fell apart.
Yep.
And there is no right or wrong, but there are general patterns, and that is that something gets bad enough that you just can't stand it anymore. You really have to go back to the drawing board, and that's where we want to find people. Now, one of the dilemmas is that before you've gotten there, it's very hard to tell anybody anything. Have you ever had that experience?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't tell anybody anything until they're
they don't think they have any problems. They don't think they're broken. They don't think they need this new great information that you have. And honestly, they probably don't, because they're not ready to receive it.
Well, and by definition, maybe they don't have any problems.
True.
They're not in pain. They're functioning. They're doing the things they say they want to do. They're on one level, they're healthy.
Right. But I think by having that conversation about it when they do have crisis, because I think everybody has points of crisis, you've been talking about it and having this conversation, and so they go, yeah, I'm going to give Marty a call, because I remember when Marty was talking about this and I didn't need it then, but now I need it now.
Yes.
And so for me, when I went through my stuff, it's like I didn't know who to call, because nobody ever talked about this thing that you go through. And so it's great if they don't have it, but I still want them to have language around it, because I still want them to know that when it does happen, there's a place to go to get help.
Yes. Amen. And I think when I was going through my stuff, you've alluded to this, where you have this idea that if you just do everything right, that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I had that for sure. I was a do-gooder church boy, rule follower.
PK.
Yeah, right. You were raised by a pastor in a church-going household, and I was raised in a church-going household as well. And I really believed that if I just kept showing up on Sunday, kept leading worship, kept going to my prayer group, kept talking to the pastor, that I couldn't fail, right? Because me and God have a deal.
Exactly.
There's a formula.
Exactly.
There's a checklist here, and I'm checking a lot of these boxes.
Oh, I had them all checked.
Right. I'm an A student.
Yep.
And everything that I do.
Yep.
But guess what? Nobody cares.
Yeah. Well, clearly God didn't, because
he doesn't. He doesn't care about the checklist. He cares about your heart.
Exactly.
And he'll do whatever it takes for your heart to be exposed,
right,
and naked,
right,
and not covered,
right,
by all of these fig leaves,
right,
like the garden. That's
right.
the Garden of Eden metaphor. But
right. So I would add that to the, like, when you said what's different on the other side, he's got my heart now.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great way to sum it up.
I think before he didn't have my heart in the same way. He's got my heart.
Are you not still, in a way, trying to be your own savior?
It's the greatest addiction, trying to save yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I have, it creeps in plenty, but I mean, I'm aware of it, and I try to allow him to save me.
It's tempting. You can always go back to doing it yourself, but that's the thing. The beauty is that he's there all the time. And it gets a little easier over time. That's another part of this message. I am way less anxious, way less wound up, way less irritable. I sleep a lot better than I did 8 to 10 years ago now. I enjoy my life a lot. It's not that I don't have stresses and real concerns, and we live on Earth, and Earth is a hard place to live sometimes. But I know that for the rest of my days that I have access to deep peace, to a good night's sleep, to joy, to relationships that are meaningful, that all I have to do is step into that with some degree of humility and allow those things to be beautiful to me, instead of blame everybody else and everything for my problems.
Yep. It's like we get to experience the fruits of the Spirit.
And yeah, there it is.
It's like it's the fruits of the Spirit, and it's a regular occurrence. It's not this thing that you're striving to get to. It's sort of just, it bubbles up around you. And like for humility, the best definition I heard was Jenny Allen. It's nothing to prove and nothing to protect.
Nothing to prove, nothing to protect.
Yep.
Hey, that's a pretty good stopping point. We should probably wind this conversation down. We're going to have you back. Maybe you should be a regular. Maybe we should joke around more. And,
Maybe.
Talk about the weather and,
right.
your dog. What's his name again?
Tucker. The dog that we were never, ever, ever going to get.
It wasn't supposed to happen.
Oh, Brad and I were adamant. And then when I turned, he was that was hard on our marriage. That might have been harder than the Bagolitas thing.
Dogs are real entities in a marriage.
It really completed our household, though.
He does this, like, first of all, he's about the size of a football.
12 pounds of perfect.
So I go over there the other night to talk about this marriage retreat we're working on, and he's in his little sweater. And he's sitting there. We're having this meeting, and it's very profound. We're talking about high-minded concepts. And Tucker has this really kind of like, I don't know, it's not really a howl, it's not really a bark, but it's like, and he just holds that note.
Yeah, he's talking.
Yeah, he just demands your attention.
Yeah.
So we had a hard time getting anything done with Tucker there.
Yeah.
But,
imagine me, I have to work with him all day at home.
Well, I'm sure that he has his moments of contribution
yes.
to the family.
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Well, thanks for listening to the Heartache Connoisseur podcast. Janice, thanks for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. And more details on the marriage retreat coming up. We will definitely keep you informed. It's in April. It's looking like location yet to be determined. And it will be open to one and all, as far as I know. But again, more details to come. So, hey, have a great weekend, everybody. I won't be on the air tomorrow.